I think we're ready to rock.
All right, man.
Okay.
Fucking A.
Thanks for doing this.
Of
I know
course.
You're super busy. We've had
it's all
reschedule
good.
a couple times.
I apologize for that, you know?
No worries,
I got
no
a little
worries.
a sick boy at home.
Yeah. I've been equally as busy, so
No doubt.
we managed to meet together.
Cool.
So I'm teaching a course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating a course, and part of one module of this course, so it's a UX fundamentals course. We're going through the whole gamut. And one of those modules is basically putting things down, right? Sketching, wireframing, prototyping. So I know you have a background in that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I thought you'd be an excellent person to talk to about that stuff. Maybe we can talk about your background a little bit, how you got into user experience design. Maybe we can talk about a few tools. We'll get a little techie. Maybe then we can back it up a little bit, talk maybe concepts, things like that, and that should wrap this up. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, give me some guidance on profanity. Can I swear?
I think you can swear. This is going up on YouTube, so YouTube is fairly open. So let the F-bombs run.
Fantastic.
I'll
try to restrain myself, but just in case.
Yeah. So I understand you started out at OCAD. A couple years ago. So tell me about that. And
So I started OCAD in 1999 in illustration. And I got there by way of having my first drawing published in Chickadee magazine when I was 5.
Oh, nice.
So I drew a picture of a knight, and it got published in the kids' pages, and I opened that issue, and I was moved by the idea of other children opening that same issue, seeing that drawing, and seeing other kids' drawings, and saying, hey, I could probably draw something like this too. So knowing that my drawing had somehow, hopefully, improved other kids' lives. And literally from that moment, 5 years old, I was like, that's all I want to do. I want to draw things that people see and that improves their lives. And so that led me through a long and storied history throughout high school and whatever to OCAD, and I went there for illustration. I love creating creative imagery out of the written word, so editorial concepts, news concepts, any sort of written meaning, taking that and telling a visual story with it. And so I studied editorial illustrators. I studied the practice of fine art. Of course, I learned to draw and paint and all the things. I was lucky to go to arts high school as well, so I started figure drawing when I was 12, and it was great. So a fairly well-practiced hand that's a little bit rusty now. But what was always really fun to me is that there was the written word. Maybe if we can get a bit esoteric here, we back up to like what communication is, right? Voice, what we're using right now to communicate is like the original interface, right? We're talking to each other, creating meaning and interacting. And since that became a reality, we've layered on all these different types of communication by which to interact and exchange meaning and value, and one of those is drawing. And I always found that like drawing felt like the next natural step after voice. It was like from grunting at each other to creating cave paintings kind of thing.
Right.
And there was something so human, the tone of our voice, the way we talk, if it's very lyrical or if it's very monotone, is like a big indicator of who we are and what we're trying to communicate. But also through the drawn concepts and illustration or paintings or whatever, there was that same level of personality that was carried through in the way your strokes worked and what medium you chose, how thick or thin your lines were, how you stylized your subject. Those sorts of things became both a representation of creative meaning, but also of personality to me. So how can I bring my own personality through an illustration while also representing a concept? And it was a really great time for me to be sort of exploring that world. I found quick success in drawing for magazines, illustrated a bunch of kids' books for Scholastic, and worked for some great publications like Harper's and a few news magazines in Canada. And
so what were you thinking career-wise, like when you're in school? What I guess UX, there wasn't such a thing.
Yeah, so it's funny, there wasn't the title UX didn't really exist, but while I was drawing, I was also always sort of creating logos and websites for like my friends. Web design, right? So using Flash or using whatever, HTML at the time, to make web pages and stuff. In fact, my first jobs in high school were creating websites for my high school in the 90s. And I always saw that as sort of like a side hustle. I love technology. I love the connectivity it provided, and it was fun. But fine art and illustration was really my passion. I wasn't really thinking about, my career at that point. I was just thinking what I'd love to do and what I'm good at. And I felt like I loved to do and was better at illustrating things. Where during my career at OCAD and my time at OCAD and starting to do my first work, where I realized that the digital arts and UX was more important to me was I was shipping all these drawings in magazines to people all over the world, or the country at least, and I wasn't receiving any feedback. Sure, some people would end up on my website some way, somehow, but there was no feedback loop of like me continually improving based on what my customers or my user was seeing, because it was print, and so then I started to look at my like web design portfolio and skills, and I was like, wait, here's an opportunity for me to both create impact at scale through the same in the same creative ways in some ways, but also measure that impact, and that's what I wasn't getting from illustration. So at that point I was like, wait, actually measuring the positive impact I'm having on people is really important to me. I want to focus on user experience more. And so there were other factors in that, like the ability to create a living doing either one or the other. Of course, being a freelance illustrator is a challenging road, and I was fairly successful, but it was still very hard. Whereas the art of UX and the value of UX was starting to be recognized in the early 2000s, and I sort of started investing in that more seriously. Right.
So what were your first kind of gigs that were maybe more UX-y than illustrative?
Sure. So before YouTube existed, I designed a video player for a TV company in Montreal called Freevee. And I remember it was back in the sort of like single page web app sort of days where we sort of tried to replicate what you would see in print, like a page kind of thing. And so this page had like a video like screen on it with all the skeuomorphic shadows and stuff, and then like a menu on the side where you could scroll through stuff, but it wasn't like these long scrolling experiences that we know are good practice now. And video technology was so nascent and new for the web then that like loading times were a huge issue, inventory was a huge issue, and so it was a good way for me to sort of like, wait, this interface and this one page that plays video, that's the easy part. It's all the like technical dependencies that are hard to solve for, and sort of started to think in those early days about like, well, what does a good loading state look like while you're waiting for a video? What does a good previous next experience look like in terms of playing a video for someone that they want to see next, based on their previous watches? So a lot of the guidance from the Netflix of the world and the YouTubes of the world didn't exist. That was a fun job.
So it's starting maybe to go pure digital rather than, there's this transition time, right, where people weren't too sure what to do. They still were living in the print era a little bit. That's right. And so maybe there's about 5-10 years where it was sort of weird. Right?
And so that's where you see all those like amazing skeuomorphic cues where like web pages have stitching on them and shadows and all this stuff. And like I love for sort of nostalgic value to bring some of that stuff back every now and then because it's hilarious. But we were very much, when we think about the concept of a desktop, that is a representation of a physical thing that we're familiar with. Even today, we call our mobile phones. That's the smallest thing they do for us, probably the least thing they do for us. We still attach things with paper clips, we still save things with discs, you know what I mean? Like there is so much skeuomorphic symbolism in our environments that I don't think will ever go away, and it's important because the physical world is as important as the digital world, and one will never replace the other.
Although the save icon still has a diskette on it.
I know, right?
Most people have never seen
a lot of folks that we work with have never even seen a diskette, you know what I mean? So there was that fun transition period. Another project I did at the time was in commerce, so I built a resale platform for a friend's store before there were Shopify's, so you had to integrate with a payment platform and all that kind of stuff to do online shopping, and that was really fun too. At the time, again, best practices weren't really established. This is sort of mid 2000s. I mean, there were people doing it, obviously, but how to show, it was like a clothing and jewelry store, and how to, simple things like, what is a good product tile look like? What does a good product landing page, the PLP? What does a good product detail page, PDP, look like? Before I had really understood those terms, I was trying to design those experiences in a way that made sense. And I think that what was more exciting to me about those projects was that there was always the opportunity to like show people what I was working on. Not that I didn't as an illustrator, but illustration felt more subjective to me, whereas UX design inherently needs to be more objective. It needs to be designed by your user.
Answer.
There is, exactly. There is an objective answer or a series of answers that your customer is going to give you. It's not necessarily going to come from you. So I learned that to be a good facilitator, a good listener, and a good conduit for user problems, needs, and solutions was really the best way to be a good UX designer. And that was probably the biggest challenge, honestly, shifting from a more subjective and creative medium like illustration into something more objective like UX, was understanding that my style, my take, my solution wasn't always going to be the right thing. It wasn't about my personality anymore. It was about the right solution for people.
Right, I see. Okay. So I imagine having illustration skills has helped you in UX. You feel it maybe hampered you in any way? Like maybe, because illustration, right, is like you were just saying, it's a different beast, right? So maybe tell me about any struggles you might have come across.
Sure. My struggles are that in any interface, any product I'm working on, I always think illustration is the best solution. Anytime there's like a spot where imagery can help show a concept, I'm always like, yeah, screw photography. Let's draw something here. And so in previous roles, I've had the opportunity to do that. And again, I'm leaning there more towards my subjective taste and saying, I think illustration would be best, less towards customer opinion. They probably want photography. They might just want words describing the thing. And so there have been times where, you know, I have spent weeks on great sets of illustrations for an app or a website, and then I go test it with customers, and they're like, what is this picture? You know, what does this mean? My style tends to be a little bit more creative and perhaps some abstract in some ways, less literal, and so inherently sometimes that creates confusion, which is the last thing you want to do in a digital product. So that's sort of more on the challenging side, and I'm sort of breaking that habit. I'm siphon my illustration projects into personal projects now and lean less on forcing them into every team and project I'm working on. But the upside to that is that back to those essential sort of pillars of communication and the emotional nature of exchanging value, illustration has been, or my background in illustration has been an incredible asset in leading design exercises for teams and business groups and engineers, whatever, in defining product. In any workshop, right, the design thinking industry and product design is full of all these workshop frameworks that are fantastic and help us work together and brainstorm the right ideas through structured activities. If you're comfortable drawing on a whiteboard or representing a concept you have in your mind on paper, in, again, just words or boxes or screens or whatever, that can go quite a long way in actually rendering your intent and the value you wish to ship, you know? And
Picture's
so
worth 1,000 words.
A picture is worth 1,000 words, literally. You know, I've sat in so many meetings and boardrooms like this where 12 people are all nodding their heads saying the same things. Yes, customer centricity, and it will be modern, and it'll use all the best practices and whatever, but we're all thinking of completely different things. And so designers go away, product managers go away, engineers go away, and we all come back with our version of the solution, and it's completely different and totally at odds with each other. So the quicker we can use images to depict what we're thinking in our minds and what we're saying with our words, the more literal and aligned we'll be on the solution we might test. And so I default to drawing all the time in any workshop scenario. As soon as we're using words or kind of confusing concepts, it's like stand up and use the whiteboard, draw a thing. And in fact, in any interview, in any sort of, anytime I'm assessing product design candidates or user experience designers, a big part of what I'm looking for is someone who can get up and whiteboard something. Like 9 times out of 10, the person holding the whiteboard marker is leading the conversation. And for better or worse, that's a really powerful tool.
So, so let's get a little techie for the gear nerds out there. So tell me about your transition with tools, with drawing tools. Imagine Adobe has been a strong influence in your life.
No doubt.
You know, let's go back to the 2000s and we can talk about kind of there's so many tools now.
Oh my God.
We should talk about some of them.
It's bananas. I went to the Ottawa School of Art for a year, and I remember learning, I think it was like Photoshop version 1 or whatever, and that was a big moment for me. I had learned Corel Draw before that in the 90s. That's what I used for web in the early 90s, right? And Flash, of course. And then Photoshop came out, and you know, it was a great tool at the time. I learned how to use it well, and I've used it ever since. I am like a vector nerd. As soon as Illustrator became a good platform, I started using that almost exclusively for all things design. So even now, my default go-to for design tool is Adobe Illustrator. I just like, this is a weird aside, but I studied physics in high school, and I got really into like parabolas and curves and stuff, and what splines do, and like anchor points and stuff like that, and the mathematical equations behind them. And so I remember really latching onto that concept in high school, and it transfers literally to the vector pen tool, right? So as you're creating those lines and as you're tweaking anchor points, you're actually creating mathematical equations that determine the nature of the curve.
Yeah.
And so that shit became really exciting to me, and Illustrator post Photoshop became the like, this is it, I'm going to do everything I ever need to do in Illustrator. So I've dabbled with tablets, I've dabbled with the iPad Pro, I've dabbled with the pencil, I've dabbled with a bunch of different stuff. I'm kind of old school and maybe a bit of a Luddite with tech, which is, I think, an advantage in designing for tech, because I think most customers are also like, you know, not super tech savvy, right? You can't give them something so advanced to learn. So I use that advantage. I'm a bit slow to onboard to things. I'm a late adopter, things like that. So I still resort to like very basic things. When I'm trying to draw something or Illustrator concept, even whiteboard a wireframe, I'll just do it on paper or on a whiteboard, and I'll take a picture of it, and then I'll just airdrop it to my computer, and I'll literally trace it with the pen tool in Illustrator. And I'm not talking the auto trace, like just hand trace. That is probably the slowest way to do anything, but I'm in love with the art of the vector. So like, I love vector line drawing, and so it's actually super enjoyable for me to like plot lines and tweak anchor points and do those curves myself. So that's what I do. I was playing with Rodney's iPad Pro the other day, and like, I see it, man. It's beautiful. It feels good. It's smooth. The lines are crazy. They're much better than what I'm probably getting. But I haven't made the transition to those tools yet. So that's from a drawing perspective. I do intend to like probably buy an iPad Pro and a pencil this year, just to like force myself to learn something new about illustration. I am sort of a purist in terms of like traditional media. I do like pen and ink. I do like paint. I do like that kind of stuff. So even when I'm illustrating digitally, I'll often apply grain filters and distressing filters to make something look like, you know, a natural medium. From a UX design and product design perspective, man, it's like tools gold out there. There's so many things to use, right? It's really you got to focus on the outcome, right? It's not about what tool. I struggle with this. Like, the outcome is to design something valuable that meets a customer need, and be able to communicate that value to the stakeholders of the business you're designing it for. Whatever tool gets you there, learn that tool and use it.
It can be done with pen and paper.
It can be done with pen and paper in some cases, right? Of course, I've used Sketch extensively, Figma a bit, used Abstract to manage version control, I've dabbled in XD, used all those tools. I can use them all. They're all fairly familiar. The patterns are all fairly familiar now. They're all sort of aligning around the right tools and ways to work. There are benefits and detractors to each one. XD's prototyping functionality is pretty strong. Sketch's libraries functionality is pretty strong. I'm actually like hoping that we can go a bit deeper into placing a bet on Figma this year here. I do think that the collaborative workflow is, again, when we talk about outcomes, part of getting to that successful outcome is bringing people along with you and collaborating with the right stakeholders and other designers along your journey. And Figma just has this like magic of co-creation in it that at least other designers can collaborate in, and product owners and business leaders can get into Figma and see what you're doing and how you're doing it. I think there is sort of some beauty in witnessing the act of creation. Back to drawing, you know, like when we're talking, you can't really see the wheels turning in my head, you know, it's all happening before my words come out, and then my words come out and they're here. When you're drawing, you're actually watching someone create, and it's pretty exciting. And so Figma opens up that potential as a collaborative design tool. So I do really like the potential of that tool for our business, for just creation in general, for people. I think collaboration is a essential value to any good producer or strategist or designer. So you know, that's the one I'm most excited about, Figma. I think from a prototyping perspective, you use Axure a lot, which is a fascinating one for like good, actually simulating real type in interactions and like input and output. The web is really all about input and output, so like being able to input through Axure is like very powerful. Principal, Proto.io, like fuck, you name it, man. There's a billion.
I find they all do about 85% of it.
Yeah. Well,
none of them do everything.
Here's the world I think Figma can take us to. That I think is the essential world. We talked about collaboration for a second there. Right now, we still work in a supply chain mentality. Even as like iterative and collaborative and agile as everybody can be, we still, run workshops to talk about strategy and create decks. Then a designer creates interfaces in Sketch or some static design tool and ships like pictures of web pages. And then an engineer codes those web pages. Well, at least those last two steps are going to be combined at some point in the next like 2 to 5 to 10 years, where a designer can actually design and code, and an engineer can consume that code and tie it to whatever back-end APIs need to empower it. So I think that as a web-based tool, Figma has that capability. Everything we're designing in Figma is actually like some rendition of code, right? And so at some point, and I'm sure it's on their roadmap, and I haven't read updates on it lately, but I'm sure they're doing it, where I can actually publish a React component as a designer in Figma. I think that is the potential of that tool, is that, and it won't take away jobs. It'll just help reduce the toil and duplication of efforts between designers and engineers. We're building this amazing application for SDM right now, and half the job we're doing is communicating to engineers the exact border radius, pixel perfection, and the color ratios of these things. Imagine we just didn't have to do that. Like, we'll look back on this moment in hopefully less than 5 years and be like, wow, that was a waste of time. Holy shit. Now this tool solves that. And I hope Figma's that tool.
I've actually done a little bit of that when I was previous jobs, when I was just one person.
Yep.
Because I have a programming background. So instead of doing a drawing, I would actually code the front end as a prototype.
Right.
And then give that to the developer. And then it wasn't in a framework. It wasn't like production ready, but they could see everything, and I just say make it like this,
exactly.
And then the questions were so few and far between. Once in a while they'd be, where does this data come from? Something more BA type stuff. But that's not always, you can't always do that. But I think that's where things are heading, at least in some way. We're getting, even just Zeppelin now does that. They have like the layout style code for iOS and Android. So we're trying.
That's a good step.
To get
Absolutely. There. I think you call it the role of sort of the front end designer there with your engineering background, which I think is a powerful role that I've explored a lot in my career, and my front end chops are pretty weak right now. But as a designer, as a good comb-shaped designer, and all the different sort of like specialties you have, I find that people either skew more like technical and engineering, and they get into that front-end world, or they skew more like qualitative research and workshopping and facilitation stuff. Of course, every good unicorn has it all, but there aren't many of them in the world. That role, like the ability to create a coded prototype, to collaborate with engineers, is going to unlock so much for us. And I think that it's hard to like imagine a great product designer with all these other skills also learning to be a great front-end developer. You can dabble enough to be dangerous, right? Which I think is important. But at some point you're going to need support from an engineer.
Exactly. But for production-ready code.
Exactly. So as if we can bring the product designer role or UX designer role and the engineering role closer and closer together, so the Venn diagrams almost completely overlap, we're just going to create better products faster.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So, just some parting words. So this course that I'm teaching will probably have a lot of graphic design students coming through. I've had a lot of questions, even up front, just, hey, is this a good course for graphic design students to take? And I tell them, yes, I think it's really, if you have that background, this is an excellent thing to put on top of that. So what for, students with a background in fine art or illustration, what would you say to them going into a UX certificate course and possibly looking to get into UX as a career?
Totally. I would tell anybody with that background that to remind yourself that the human experience is a time-based experience. Things happen sequentially, and they're all related to each other. And to imagine the work that you're doing as one isolated, standalone thing limits your potential for understanding what happens before and after that thing exists, or someone experiences that thing. So UX is a great opportunity to understand the customer journey, the user flow, the human experience that brings somebody to a piece of art, a piece of graphic design, a product, throughout a product. And I think without understanding that context of what brought somebody there and how they feel after, doesn't matter what you're creating, but understanding the context of before and after will only make you better and make you empathize more deeply and understand the people you're designing for. So I think, frankly, in life, everybody should just understand that concept that the human experience is a time-based thing and everything is related to each other. Again, fairly esoteric shit, but UX is sort of the first step in understanding that. The other thing that the biggest piece of advice I give to any designer generally, illustrator, whatever, anybody who's trying to create meaning in the world, is that, better or worse, man, 90% of your success relies on your ability to communicate. We talked about communication to kick this off, right? The spoken word, the illustrated word, the written word. UX and product design and sometimes graphic design, you're representing very complex concepts. The ability to simplify, inspire, and communicate those concepts and why your solutions are valuable and why they're the right thing is almost the only thing that matters. Mm-hmm. You can be the most incredible designer in the world, and if you can't represent your work to a group, a room, a stakeholder, it's going to end up in a drawer and it's never going to see the light of day. So I advocate for any designer I work with to always focus on communication, public speaking, the arts of communication that don't feel like design, but are the essential ingredients to a successful designer. That's the other thing that I think, UX is, from an academic perspective, you're learning about all the processes and tools that go into a good user experience. But eventually you have to sell that user experience to somebody or communicate it to somebody. And if you're not focused on that as well, then all this work doesn't really matter as much, Those are some sort of parting thoughts for folks who are in your program. I think it'll be a great one.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Man, thanks so much. It was great chatting with you, man.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, there's a lot here for the students to watch.
I hope so. Great.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Alrighty.
Cool.